It is Tuesday night in East Lansing. My name is Jim Comparoni. Welcome, SpartanMag live on a Tuesday night, couple days before Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's doing great. Glad to have you again. Gather around, gather around. Behave yourselves. Behave yourselves. I know you will. Tell us what beverage you have. Pre-Thanksgiving cheer, some of that going on. We will be talking Michigan State football and basketball for the next hour, hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. And we will be taking your questions live. Make sure to put your questions over there in the chat area. Also, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, get over to SpartanMag.com. Right now, if you're not already a subscriber, now's a great time to do it. 25% off right now. And if you subscribe between now and like December 2nd, you will get a $75 Nike gift card. And we appreciate those that take us up on that. And those of you that have been longtime subscribers, we appreciate you even more. Thanks for staying with us. Wish we had some great things to give to you, but I don't have anything. If I could, maybe we'd have a big tailgate and I'd hand out attaboys or something like that, pats on the back. Maybe one of these days we'll be able to get some trinkets for you. We certainly appreciate you. SpartanMag.com is the best online community of Michigan State fans. Been covering Michigan State sports at SpartanMag.com basically since the beginning of the internet. Have a great online community over there. Go check us out right now. We've got a lot of free coverage, or some of the stories are half free, and then the rest is behind the paywall. But if you're interested, check out some of the content there. And if you like it, dive in. And as always, get over to the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative when it comes to Michigan State football, basketball, recruiting, a little bit of hockey also. Last week, a lot of hockey. There was no basketball, no football, which is strange for hockey season. Able to focus in on Michigan State last year, get a win and a tie against Arizona State. 5 freshmen playing regularly, and something to build on. Michigan State will be back in action for hockey this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, down in Columbus against the Buckeyes, who are ranked number 9 in the country, playing Minnesota tonight, I believe. We will take questions here at that were posted mailbag style at the Underground Bunker message board. We invited our subscribers over there to go ahead and post your questions at the Underground Bunker message board at the Spartan Mag Live thread. Got about 9 questions tonight, a little bit lower on questions. Maybe we will get more over in the chat area. Make sure to put some questions over there if you get a chance. Again, it's great to see everybody filing in. Great to have everybody here. Did not get a chance to have our post-game live call-in show on Saturday, of course, because Michigan State was out of action. Game canceled against the Terrapins, of course. I'm going to post right now in the bunker reminding people that we've got this going on. Bear with me. Sorry about that. Should have had that up already. Appreciate you guys waiting. Anyway, let's get right to the questions. Question number 1. Dave from St. Joe's, Michigan says, Jim, if MSU ends up winning the Big Ten title in basketball, who will have stepped up and taken the majority of the minutes at the center position between Kithier, Bingham, Marble, and Sissoko? So, question number 1, getting right to it. Basketball. Michigan State opening up in basketball tomorrow being Wednesday. You might be watching this on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. Michigan State playing Eastern Michigan at the Breslin Center, 6 o'clock Wednesday. And getting late to the start of the season, of course, November 24th. Late by recent standards. Back in the 1990s, they would be starting around Thanksgiving weekend. That was the old beginning of the basketball season. The season's grown longer in recent years. Earlier, not a bad thing. Michigan State taking on Eastern Michigan with that zone defense. Wants to know who the 5 starters. No, he wants to know if there's a Big Ten championship, who for Michigan State will have stepped up. Definitely has to be a center because that's the biggest question mark area of the team. At the point you've got Rocket Watts and Lawyer backing him up. Lawyer can come in and play more point than he did last year. Rocket can swing over to the 2 a little bit, but he'll primarily be the point guard. We'll have to wait and see how Lawyer does. I think there's a chance that Lawyer could be more serviceable this year in a lot of ways, play some more minutes. Not saying the majority of the minutes, but more than 4 minutes a half. So you've got Aaron Henry, Gabe Brown. Really intrigued to see what Joshua Langford has here in these first two games, Wednesday against Eastern Michigan, Saturday against Notre Dame, to see what percentage of the old Josh Langford we're going to see this week and in the weeks ahead. Really intriguing. I have no idea what to expect there. The coaches are optimistic. We spoke with Joshua Langford a little bit yesterday in a Zoom press conference. He says it's going to be strange. He basically has not played in 23 months. So Langford's going to be interesting. So Michigan State is solid in a lot of positions. Joey Hauser, the transfer from Marquette, going to be a good one at the stretch four. So, of course, the question is the 5. Who's going to start at the 5? And the question is, if Michigan State wins a Big Ten title, that means somebody came around at the center position. He's asking. Dave out of St. Joe's, Michigan is asking, who is that going to be if it's going to go that way? All right. Talking about a hypothetical here. If Michigan State wins the Big Ten title, it means the center came around, and I have to believe that will mean it was Marcus Bingham who came around. Now, I've not seen Bingham play since you guys saw him play in March. We in the media have not been able to watch any practices this fall. There have been no exhibition games, no preseason games, no green and white game. Couldn't even watch. There wasn't even any money ball during the summer. So I've not seen him since the last time you saw him. And back then, he was still a little bit awkward, inconsistent. Last year began the season as a shot-oriented, perimeter shooting, thinking big man. The perimeter shot never really came around for him, so he tried to help in other ways. Played some good defense in the victory over Illinois against Coburn. But he's been inconsistent. We talked to Dwayne Stevens about it yesterday. Asked him if any of those candidates have stepped up. And he said, I wish there were someone who stepped up, but each of them have shown good things on occasion. And his quote about Marcus Bingham, he said, quote, there are days when Marcus looks unbelievable, unquote. Days when he looks unbelievable. That sounds encouraging. That sounds like a high ceiling of potential. Sounds like what they've been talking about with Marcus Bingham for a while, but maybe getting closer to getting serviceable, consistent play. I'm expecting Bingham to start. He started several games last year. And just because he's starting doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be finishing. Doesn't mean he's going to be playing the majority of the minutes. He played good defense that one game against Coburn, which was very encouraging. Can he do that every single game, every single week? You'll begin to know when I know, but I suspect with Bingham, even if he plays well this year, even if he's a good player, it's still going to be up and down. And Izzo, that'll test Izzo's patience, and Izzo will respond by juggling the lineup, which he likes to do to try to wake players up. And it works. So with Bingham, he played well against Coburn the one time. I've mentioned that for a third time. Can he play against a variety of different centers? And, teams aren't really going to low post you up and go right at you down low these days. Not many teams do that. There were probably more teams in the Big Ten that did that last year than you would see percentage-wise across the country. He's shown that if he watches a lot of film, he can do that pretty well. But even that, day in and day out, can he play defense day in and day out, bumping with people? Now, he can block shots from the weak side and do things like that. Rebounding, can he be consistent every game out? Or is he a guy that might get 8 one game and 3 the next? I suspect that'll be the case, more inconsistent. But for Michigan State to win a Big Ten title, they'll need consistency. Bingham, I think, is the best chance to do that. Sissoko, we've not seen him at all. Looks great. All airport team. He's got a lot to learn. Explosive finisher. Looks great in the highlight reels. Julius Marble last year, he only played double-digit minutes once all last season. I think that was against Charleston Southern. Against Eastern Michigan, he had 9 points and 5 rebounds. That was his best game of the year, was against Eastern Michigan's zone. So maybe Julius Marble will find another way to navigate that zone and get some things done. Last year when he got things done, a lot of that was with the offense going through Xavier Tillman. Tillman operating at the free throw line. Of course, they don't have Xavier Tillman anymore. Marble, got to believe, has improved a little bit. He's a year older. He's a sophomore. Now, Kithier is someone to keep an eye on. Thomas Kithier. We said this last year when everybody was excited about Marble and Bingham. I continued to say, hey, Kithier is a guy that is more of a known commodity. He's going to be in the correct place. He's going to run the floor well. Rebounds per minute, I think Thomas Kithier led the Michigan State team in rebounds per minute last year. Averaged about 3 rebounds a game, maybe 12 minutes a game. He struggles with size a little bit, 6'8". I'm not sure he's all of 6'8". He's not the most rotund guy. He's put together okay, but at 6'8", you need to have more physicality than he was able to provide last year. He's doing his best. He's working on his body. I don't know what he looks like now. Maybe he's gotten thicker. You'll begin to know on Wednesday when I begin to know. I'll be there. You guys will be watching on TV. But Kithier is somebody that Stevens put in the conversation amongst the 7 players that he says right now have a chance to start. Those that I mentioned a moment ago, plus Kithier. So I suspect Bingham might get the start, but when things run afoul with Bingham, and they will at some point in the season, Kithier will be in line to maybe jump in there and get a starting gig at that point. And then you reel Bingham back and give him another chance if he continues to show potential there. So Kithier, Sissoko, Marble, Bingham, if they're all in there, Bingham has the highest ceiling of potential in some ways, but Marble and Sissoko are strong men that have a different type of potential. I'm eager to find out. And last year we talked about the power forward position, who's going to be the power forward for Michigan State, and they never really nailed one down. Bingham started a little bit with Tillman. Tillman would play the 5 on offense, 4 on defense a lot. But the 4 never really came around in terms of being a stretch 4 at both ends of the court. Malik Hall gave it a shot for a little bit, but hold on a second. Sorry for that interruption. Last year, they never really got a power forward to come around for them, did it by committee, and survived. This year wouldn't surprise me if it's center by committee, and the committee begins with Bingham. But Bingham's is a guy that I think has a chance to do the most this year in a lot of ways. Now, remember, at the center position, they may not need a lot of offense from that guy. Maybe an occasional post-up at the beginning of a game, maybe coming out of a timeout once in a great while, clean up some garbage, get to the free throw line, play defense, run the middle of the floor. In terms of running the middle of the floor, I don't see Bingham doing that. The other ones, Kithier's done it a little bit. Not seen Marble do it, haven't seen Sissoko at all. So at Michigan State, you can win with 4 players providing a lot of offense and 1 person providing a role. So you don't need that guy to be Elvin Hayes, right? You don't need that center to be Wes Unseld, much less Andre Hudson. And they think Julius Marble has a chance to be a Hudson type of guy at some point. It's going to be great to watch those 4 players get minutes because it's going to be dress rehearsal throughout the preseason schedule. Notre Dame game is going to be a challenge, of course, but watching how the center situation comes around is going to be intriguing. And that's where my friend Tim Stout gets it wrong a little bit. He wants to watch basketball games, and he expects to see a competitive game. Why are you watching a game? Because you're keeping score. I want to see a competitive game, a game that's in doubt. It's not the way it works, college basketball. You got 30 games to get your crap together. This year, 25 games to get your crap together. Some of that crap has to come together in different ways. And whether you're playing Eastern Michigan, University of Detroit, Oakland University, Western Michigan, going to be competitive games, more competitive than playing against Charleston Southern. But when you're playing Charleston Southern or some of these teams, the score's not going to be in doubt, but it's like a public practice. Would I like to watch practice this fall? Heck yes. We don't get to watch practice, but we get to watch them play Eastern Michigan. And even if the score gets lopsided and Michigan State's up by 20 at halftime, that doesn't mean that the meaningful minutes of basketball have vanished, Mr. Stout. It means that you can watch the center position to see who among those 4 players is making the most progress or has not progressed at all, whether it be Kithier, Sissoko, Marble, Bingham. Doesn't matter what the score is. It's interesting to watch player development, especially that position. Sorry that answer was so long. It took too long. I apologize about that. Spefton from East Lansing says, going to football, he says, I thought Northwestern's front 7 looked very tough against Wisconsin, whose beefy linemen shredded Michigan's defense the week before. If we, meaning Michigan State, cannot run inside against Northwestern on Saturday, what kind of schemes do we need to have any chance to score points? He says, I don't think Northwestern can pour it on like Iowa did against us, 49 points. But I have this nagging dread that our Michigan State offense will lay another goose egg. Am I way off base? No, you're not off base. It's possible Michigan State could get shut out again. And I'd have to. When's the last time they were shut out in back-to-back games? Someone can look that up. Maybe Old Tuck can look that up. I don't know. But yeah, that Northwestern defensive front, like I said, I posted on the message board, I describe those guys as hammers. They got some hammers on that team. Wisconsin had some hammers. Iowa had some hammers. Indiana had some hammers. But Northwestern might have the most hammers on defense. That defensive line against the Wisconsin offensive line, everybody knows what the Wisconsin offensive line is. They're quality. And Northwestern was not giving an inch on those Wisconsin zone plays or the gap plays. And occasionally, not only were they withstanding the line of scrimmage, they would have one of the four guys defeating the block to get off and get into the backfield. 55, the defensive end, outstanding pass rusher. I can't pronounce his name. I'll have to look it up. We'll get that together for the pre-snap read. But I saw him when Northwestern played against Iowa. I'm like, who's number 55? He's from North Carolina. Was like a 3-star recruit. Head and shoulder pass rush, shoulder dip, ankle flexibility, turn the corner, accelerate. Excellent player. So not just guys that'll two-gap and play stout against the run. I mean, they'll do some of that, but also between him and the other guy, I think, is 49, the other defensive end. He can dip his shoulder too, man. They put together some players. Mel Tucker was talking about it today in the press conference, saying that he can see how this team was built in the weight room. He said the same thing about Iowa. So he respects how Iowa and Northwestern have built these teams in the weight room, and he kind of envies that. That's what he's going for at Michigan State, to have those type of guys. And Michigan State does not have enough of them right now. But, Northwestern, when you look at what they did defensively, they held Wisconsin to 136 yards, net yards rushing, 40 carries. Now, Wisconsin gained 177, and then after sacks, they ended up with 136 net. Wisconsin, 3.4 yards per carry. Jalen Berger, Wisconsin's top rusher, 93 yards on 15 carries. So Wisconsin got a little bit here and there, nibbled, turned it over, but really couldn't puncture that terrific Northwestern defense on a regular basis. Iowa, I criticized Iowa for 2 or 3 weeks because they passed the ball so much against Northwestern. I'm like, why didn't you try to run it? Well, now we kind of see what Kirk Ferentz and offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz, what they were looking at when they decided to go to the air. Even though Iowa jumped ahead of Northwestern 17-0, ended up losing, I think, 21-20. Jumped up 17-0. Northwestern fumbled a punt inside their 10-yard line, and there was some other big play that happened. And then after they got to 17, Iowa barely did anything on offense and went to the air, threw 51 times, even though they had that lead they were trying to protect. Iowa only had 17 tailback carries in that game. But Iowa averaged 3.3 yards per carry, which is not bad. But I suspect if Kirk Ferentz had it to do over again, they would have explored the run a little bit more. But I can see what he saw on film and why he was deterred from trying to run it. And for Iowa to be deterred from trying to run it, that is a big tip of the hat of respect as a Hawkeye team can give to a Northwestern defense. Nebraska rushed for 224 against Northwestern. I've not watched that game yet. I'm not sure how they went about it. The quarterback, Adrian Martinez, rushed for 102. That's a good figure for a quarterback. I'm not sure if Michigan State can replicate any of what Adrian Martinez did. Now, Purdue played Northwestern pretty tight, probably, a 10-point game most of the way. Ended up being like 20-17 or something like that. Their running back, Xander Horvath, excellent, tough running back, hard-running running back, kind of like Pacheco a little bit for Rutgers, kind of like Scotty Green a little bit for Michigan State back in the day, Xander Horvath. But he only had 10 carries against Northwestern. 10 carries, 21 yards, 2.1 per carry. Counting sacks, Northwestern ran the ball, counting sacks, only 17 times against Northwestern. Purdue ran the ball 17 times. Do you know how many yards they netted positively for the game total? Northwestern, 2 yards. 2 yards on 17 carries. Now, Xander Horvath, the running back, the Scott Green running back, 9 catches, 100 yards. So they threw to the running back. Purdue did. The original question was, what can Michigan State do to try to generate some points? Purdue threw to the running back 9 times, 100 yards. Also, they got a touchdown on 4th and 1. They went 2 tight ends, 2 backs. Northwestern brought everybody in, play action, and they leaked out a tight end. I can't remember if it was an over route or just kind of a sneak route. Got it at the tight end. You might remember seeing the highlight, number 88 or something like that, big old horse running down the sideline, like a 48-yard touchdown. So you have to steal points, that type of thing. 4th and 1, throw the ball, tight end. You got to steal points like that. I mean, they fumbled a punt against Iowa. This is an excellent defense. So you're asking how's it going to get done? Things like that. I'll be watching more of the film tomorrow, I guess, or even Thursday, Thanksgiving night, to put together the pre-snap read for Friday. I hope this microphone doesn't come down. It could. It's broken before. This thing keeps going south on me a little bit. So it's not going to be easy. And, Michigan State right now, you look at who they're playing back to back to back. And Drippy, I saw your post. You don't want to talk about football. You're saying football is depressing. I don't see anything depressing about it. I see, Michigan State's losing games, whatever. The season, did you expect a good season this year? And what you didn't suspect is that Northwestern was going to be this good and that Indiana was going to be this good. When the schedule first came out, it looked favorable for Michigan State. But you look at Michigan State and what they're doing right now, this 3-game period without the Maryland game. Yeah, and Alex James makes a point. The Minnesota game was canceled. When we looked at the second schedule, not the first schedule. The first schedule had Michigan State playing Northwestern in the opening game, and none of us knew what that was going to end up looking like. We didn't know Northwestern was going to look like this. Every year in July and August, we think we know what teams look like. We think we know what Michigan is going to look like. We think we know what Penn State's going to look like. We were wrong. Last year, we thought we knew what Minnesota was going to be before the season. We were wrong. They won 10, 11 games, went to the Florida and beat Auburn in a bowl game, beat Penn State in a battle of unbeatens late in the year. But, I mean, we wouldn't have thought that the 2 crossover games, Iowa and Northwestern, would be basically Michigan State got the 2 toughest teams in the West. Well, no, I guess 2 of the top 3. Wisconsin, of course, is one of the top 3. But right now, it's very possible that the 3 best teams in the Big Ten are Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State. Wisconsin's pretty good, but they haven't played many games. They're still trying to figure out who they are. And Graham Mertz played like Ethel Mertz a little bit last weekend. Nothing against him. He's a fine talent. I'm sure he's a fine young man. But the Northwestern defense bottled him up. So, when you've got back-to-back-to-back, Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan State right now playing arguably the 3 best teams in the Big Ten. Definitely the 2 best teams in the Big Ten in these next 2 games. Indiana may very well prove to have been the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. So you've got a 7-game schedule. And you've got back-to-back-to-back the 3 best teams in the Big Ten. I think the football playoff rankings came out for the first time just a little bit ago, and I think I saw that Northwestern, number 8 in the country. I saw some people barking on the internet saying, because Georgia's number 9, saying, well, how can Georgia be below Northwestern? If they played this weekend, Georgia would be a 2-touchdown favorite. Well, I'm sure Auburn was a 2-touchdown favorite against Minnesota last year in the bowl game, too. And Northwestern's played tough in bowl games, and hopefully there'll be some bowl games this year. Hopefully Northwestern will get a chance to go down south and under the Florida sunshine and play some defense. Show them what that looks like. I would love to see one of those teams come up here and play Northwestern in Soldier Field on like January 3rd. Because I think this Northwestern team could play well in cold weather. That might shut some of those people up for a while. I'm not saying they would beat Georgia, but Georgia's already had their chance. They've got 2 losses. They played Alabama, lost. Played Florida, lost. They may end up being a really good team, but they've had their chance. They essentially had their playoff already. You can't rank them number 7 or 8. And if they win out from here and they don't have to play Florida anymore and they don't play Georgia in the title game or Alabama in the title game, and if other teams lose and all of a sudden they're knocking on the door to be number 4, no. They've had their chance. They might end up being the 3rd best team in the country with JT Daniels. I don't know. I doubt it. But the point is, college football season, every game counts. They had their chance. Shut up. So here we go. I could look, the pass defense is what's interesting against Northwestern also. They're stopping the run against these teams other than Nebraska. But Wisconsin, Graham Mertz, 23 out of 41, 230. The big thing is 3 interceptions for Wisconsin. When do you ever see Wisconsin throw 3 interceptions? Petrus, the kid from Iowa, they made him look bad. 3 interceptions. He's 26 out of 50 for only 216. Went to the air 50 times, only 216, 3 interceptions. Aiden O'Connell of Purdue, underrated quarterback. He had some success. Threw for 263, 28 of 51. 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So the guy for Purdue is the guy that avoided interceptions. Michigan State has to avoid turnovers, has to avoid interceptions. That's the case all the time, especially against Purdue, a team that'll turn you over. Against Northwestern, a team that'll turn you over. That was the case. They needed to avoid turnovers against Indiana. Didn't get it done. Changed quarterbacks. Peyton Thorne, we'll see if he can do it now. Let's get over here to the YouTube channel and to our YouTube channel and check out the chat area to see what kind of questions we're getting from the rascals out there. Glad to have people joining us. All right, let's see. All right, Rob South checking in first. Good to see Rob South. Close to perfect attendance for Rob South over the years. Appreciate that. Old Tuck, the bell cow of the operation. He's here. Doors Fan 91. Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Old Tuck says, Old Tuck, what are you hearing about Hogard? Can he play any point guard? Hogard, all that I've, he had to get a knee cleaned up a little bit. I guess it went okay. Hogard is the freshman out of Coatesville, Pennsylvania, by way of Huntington Prep in West Virginia. And this thing's going to come tumbling down. You guys are going to laugh at me. Hogard, had that. So he's just getting back into practice now. But the pictures I've seen, he was a guy in high school that kind of carried a little bit of extra weight. So you look forward to getting him to college, shedding that weight so he can get quicker. He's got a feel for the game. As a point guard, he's like a shorter Draymond Green a little bit. I once said Cassius Winston had some Draymond Green in his game. If Draymond Green were 6'1", he would have played like Cassius Winston. Not sure he could have shot that as well as Cassius did. But anyway, Hogard was chunky in high school, and now he's even chunkier. So I'm not expecting much out of him. I might be wrong. I've not seen practice. Nobody has told me this. Coaches, guarded with information this year. Haven't had any off-the-record conversations with coaches, which are so valuable. Have not been able to do that because all conversations are via Zoom this year. But just me, just reading the tea leaves, looking at seeing what kind of player he was in high school, knowing he's had to sit out, looking at some of those photos, the publicity photos, I have a hard time believing he would be able to help very much this year. Nothing against him. I just not expecting anything out of Hogard. Could be good in the future. Got to get in shape. All those things. If he gets in shape and feels better, maybe by the end of this year, he might look different. By February, maybe in garbage time, he might be able to come in and make some progress. But I don't. Yeah, yes, he can play some point in the future. He's a combo guard. I think that was the initial question, but not for this year. I don't anticipate that at all. All right. Brian V., happy Thanksgiving, Jim and the SpartanMag crew. Thank you, Brian V. Old Tuck says, point guard foul trouble. Who would play in emergency if Rocket is in foul trouble and Lawyer is out with COVID? Now, that's an outside-the-box question. And the coaches talk about things like that. They say, Stevens was talking about this in the Zoom press conference yesterday. He said the coaches have talked to them amongst themselves, and Izzo has said, hey, the teams that handle COVID the best are going to be the teams that win championships across the country in the various conferences, because there will be some knuckleballs thrown out there. And Old Tuck just pointed one out right there. The answer is Hoiberg. Hoiberg's still on the team, and they like him. And Izzo mentioned him 3 weeks ago as a guy that's played pretty well, up to the Hoiberg standard. But if something like that happened, it would be Hoiberg, and that might be reminiscent of years ago when Cleves was injured and Bell had to play point guard, but the backup point guard became Mookie. What was Mookie's name? I see him around sometimes. He was a walk-on, 5'11", and Mookie even played extended minutes. Was it against Louisville one time? I want to say Louisville, like early in the Izzo era, the Cleves era. So it would be Hoiberg, and they can get by with that. It would be Hoiberg ahead of Hogard right now, I would forecast. Potentially, could that change by late February? Maybe, but I wouldn't expect it to. They feel like Hoiberg can do okay. Now, they're not going to be playing Hoiberg a ton, but in the scenario that you mentioned, that's what would happen. All right, let me send out a tweet now to get even more riffraff in here. Thought I had that thing all set up. Now I can't find it. So I'll take this time to wish everybody a happy and safe and healthy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a good time singing their Thanksgiving carols. And I can't find my Twitter page that I'd set up. Is this it? Probably not. I'm going to have to make a new one. Sorry for the delay there. Appreciate everybody stopping by and all the Spartan Maggers, all the subscribers out there. If you just came in, make sure to go over to SpartanMag.com. 25% off a subscription right now. Nike, $75 Nike gift card. Have fun. Gather around. So let's move on to question number 3 this is CJ from Lockdown, South Philadelphia. He says, hey, Jim, thanks again for all you do. Thank you. He says, this is a recruiting question. This is a kind of a national trend recruiting question. He says, under Jim Tressel, Ohio State recruited very well. Things went up to elite recruiting for Ohio State with Urban Meyer. He says, Ryan Day has that machine off the charts now. Have you ever seen anything like this? Miami Hurricanes, USC Trojans in the early 2000s are the only teams I can remember close to this. Yeah, USC in the Pete Carroll days. As far as the interesting thing about the way Ohio State has done it is the way that, they were always a good recruiting machine, especially in the Midwest, especially in the state of Ohio. John Cooper used to recruit in the state of Ohio a lot. Tressel did too. One of the changes is Urban Meyer made them more of a national recruiter. They could always recruit nationally to an extent, but they really amplified it and have really become a national presence, acting like Notre Dame used to. And they got another top, like a 5-star, top 100. I don't know if he's a 5-star, but they got another top 100 out of Texas yesterday. I saw a graphic that says that Ohio State has more 5-stars out of the state of Texas, I think in the last 3 years, than Texas or Texas A&M. I think maybe more than A&M and the Longhorns combined. Ohio State going 2,000 miles away to do that. Of course, they've recruited well the West Coast and Florida and everywhere else. So they've always been a recruiting machine, but going national to do it. Have I ever seen another program do it the way they've done it? No, but Michigan, when they transitioned from the Schembechler era into Moeller and Carr, they went from being a very good recruiting presence, of course, mostly centralized in the Midwest with some exceptions, but mainly Midwestern recruiting. That's the way Bo built it. But they changed gears to be more of a national recruiting entity under Carr, and that began with Moeller a little bit. So in terms of recruiting success, what Ohio State's doing right now is similar to Michigan. Because those of you that are old enough to remember, Michigan in recruiting back in the 90s would be top 5 in the country all the time. And Michigan recruits well right now, and they've been recruiting well for the last several years. But they used to recruit better in terms of rankings, for what that's worth. So Michigan would be the Michigan of the Carr Moeller / era is probably the closest thing I've seen in terms of going from Tressel to Urban Meyer. You talked about Miami. Now, Miami, I mean, they recruited great, of course, in a couple different eras. But, they did it closer to home. They did it with South Florida guys. They didn't, I mean, they did a little bit nationally, but they didn't have to. So you're asking about Ohio State. When I think Ohio State, I think about a team that's branched out nationally. The Hurricanes didn't do that. They just kept everybody home. Talent-wise, yes. Miami, similar talent. Talent-wise, yes. Those USC teams, with Pete Carroll, talent-wise, comparable. But I think the closest might be Michigan, the way they went national for a little while. They still attempt to, but not quite getting it done the way they used to. Question from Mike from Macomb, Michigan. He says, Comp, keep up the great work. Appreciate that. You keep up the great work too. He says, with the extra year of eligibility allowed for the NCAA, how many seniors on the current team do you expect to be back on next year's team? He says, it will be interesting to see how many players will want to return and how many of them Tucker will allow to return. He says, has the NCAA made any decision on scholarship numbers for the 2021 season to address this potential issue of seniors returning and freshmen arriving? I know they have to get down to 85 scholarships by 2022. And I saw this question earlier, and I've not gotten a straight answer from people when I've asked in the past. I tried to do some Google searches to do a little research. I haven't sent an email to somebody. I'm not sure if they got back to me or not. But next year for 2021, I was reading the most recent article I read made it sound like they're going to waive the 85 scholarships for next year. That's what they're doing for spring sports, baseball coming up in the spring of 2021. Now we all know that seniors can come back next year because they waived this year in terms of an eligibility year counter. So if you're a senior, you can retain senior status next year. So it's my understanding you can keep as many as you want seniors. Now, right now, I've got Michigan State I just went through the roster. I don't know if this is official, but I think they had 84 on scholarship for this fall. I'm sure they used the 85th for somebody. But when I count 84 scholarships, I'm counting Luke Fulton, who's suspended right now. I'm counting Justin Stevens, who stayed home in Canada due to COVID concerns. I don't know. I should ask Justin. I don't know if Justin is, because I've been able to talk with him a little bit on Twitter. I'd like to ask him if he's taking Michigan State classes up in Canada. And if so, if so, then you can assume that scholarship money is paying for it. But anyway, with 84 scholarship players right now, that counts Luke Fulton, who's got a chance to not be coming back. Justin Stevens, Blake Buter, former walk-on, I think he might be on scholarship now. Luke Campbell, who seems like he's retired. The punter, Mitchell Crawford, who came in from UTEP, probably a one-and-done grad transfer, punted a couple of times against Iowa, but lost the job to Bryce Behringer, which did not surprise me. I did not count Bryce Behringer, I don't think, when I went through for 84. And that's not counting Anthony Williams or Marcel Lewis, who have gone to the portal, no longer with the program. They've been escorted to the portal. So actually, obviously, Williams and Lewis were on scholarship this year. I'm sure they were part of the 85. I counted 84. So one of those guys I just mentioned was not on scholarship. Maybe it was Blake Buter. Pedroza, the long snapper, I think he's still a walk-on. So anyway, in terms of players who might not be coming back, of course, Luke Fulton with his situation. Larice Nelson is a senior. We've not seen him on the dress list. I assume we're not going to be seeing him. Javez Alexander, redshirt sophomore wide receiver. Haven't seen him at all. I would have to assume he's on thin ice in terms of staying around. Now, I know these guys are not seniors. I'm just talking about scholarship slots. Parks Kissinger, haven't seen him. It was mentioned on our message board a couple of weeks ago that he was Scout Team Player of the Week. That was good, and I kind of expected to see him possibly to be on the field after Matt Dotson went down with the injury. Didn't happen. And he's not made the dress list team. Damon Kaler has not made the dress list. He's a redshirt sophomore, offensive lineman from Indiana. Haven't heard much about him since he arrived. Those 5 players, 4 of them underclassmen on scholarship. Solid chance, though. I'm not saying anything they don't already know. There's a good chance those scholarships could be culled. Is that the word? That gets you down to 84. Gets you down to 80. If you don't have Luke Fulton, that gets down to 79. As far as seniors, I'm counting 7 seniors right now. And, that's Antoine Simmons, Matt Coughlin, Matt Dotson, Naquan Jones, Panashuk, Trey Person, A.J.R. Curry, Dominic Long, Larice Nelson, Luke Campbell, Matt Allen, Jordan Reed. Those are the scholarship seniors, 12 of them. Now, Antoine Simmons probably going to the NFL. Wish him well. Keep Michigan State's draft streak alive, right? Larice Nelson, probably not going to be back. Luke Campbell, looks like he's already gone. Matt Allen, struggled with injuries this year, struggled in the opener. I could see Matt Allen deciding, you know what, I've had enough, I'm done. Jordan Reed, does he come back? I'm assuming so. By the way, do you miss Jordan Reed now? I mean, Jarvis is doing his best at offensive tackle, but Jarvis at right tackle is not as good as Jordan Reed was, especially in pass protection. I know Jordan Reed had his detractors, and of course, Jarvis is playing out of position, but in the offseason, a lot of people were, talking about Jordan Reed as if he were a negative, assuming that Jarvis would do that job better than Reed. No, there's a reason Reed was starting out there. I'm not saying he's great, but they could use him. And this weekend at right tackle, you watch number 55, Jarvis doing his best, but Jordan Reed from last year would have a better chance to block 55 this weekend than Jarvis will. Jarvis, hope he proves me wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, as far as seniors go, I wonder about someone like the kicker, Matt Coughlin. I know Coughlin has struggled here and there. The Olsen kid came in. I'm not sure what that competition is looking like in practice, but I wonder if Coughlin would want to come back. I'm assuming Matt Dotson's going to want to come back. If he wants to continue to play football, would he grad transfer somewhere? Maybe. But Dotson, being injured last year for the last 5 games, injured this year after the Michigan game for who knows how long, a guy that was rushed into eligibility, never got a chance to redshirt. Depending on how much he loves football, as Mel Tucker likes to say, I think Matt Dotson would be a candidate to come back for an extra senior year. I think you would hope it would be at Michigan State because they need tight end bodies, but you never know. A guy like that might want to go transfer out and give it a shot somewhere else. I'm not saying that I know anything in that. I don't know anything about that. Just wouldn't shock me. But I think Simmons will be gone. Coughlin, I'm not sure. Naquan Jones, I don't know. Tucker was saying today that he speaks with Naquan Jones quite frequently. That's one of the players on the team that he has conversations with a lot. Naquan Jones very candid today, talking about some personal things. He lost his mother. She died, I think, last year. I'm not sure of what. I think you can look that up. I think the Free Press might have done a story on that last year. And then he says he's lost family members to COVID this year, and he had COVID when he was on campus, like late summer. He said that he had slight symptoms, nothing major. He lost his sense of smell for a couple of days, he said. But then he was okay. And he thought about opting out, decided to come back, decided to play. And, Tucker talks about Naquan Jones, they're motivating him to get to that high level and keep it there. And I mentioned here in other podcasts that he didn't play great against Rutgers. Then he played well against Michigan. And then he didn't play real well against Iowa. Got moved off the line of scrimmage by double team blocks. And I mentioned that. And Jalen Hunt was playing better. And then the next week, Jalen Hunt started over Naquan Jones. And that did not shock me. But Naquan Jones against Indiana played some of the best snaps of his season. So you take away his starting job, and that pilot light was lit. So Naquan Jones was describing himself as being kind of a gentle giant type of guy, that wants to be a real nice guy off the field and has to, as Harlan Barnett used to say, let that other guy out of the cage between the lines on the football field. He says he's still trying to learning to do that. Now, he was a backup for 3 years, and not counting the year he redshirted. And backed up Raekwon Williams, backed up Mike Panashuk. Naquan Jones has a lot of ability, but behind those two guys that he had a lot of respect for, did he give himself some self-imposed limitations? to not really push to win a starting job against those two guys. Maybe he didn't believe that he could. Secondly, maybe he was not motivated to beat out those guys. Did he get comfortable being a backup? Doesn't say anything bad about him as a character, of course. Good guy. I think he said advertising major. He's going to be graduating next month. Good for him. So, did he get comfortable being a backup? And then did some of that mindset carry over to this season when Panasiuk and Raekwon Williams were gone? Now he's the guy that's got to come through. Did too much of that complacency come with him as a starter, causing him to lose his starting job last week or last game? I think so. So then after the loss to Indiana, he had a good game, but he tweeted out, hey, we're coming back strong. We're going to be good. No problems. He tweeted that like 3 hours after the game. I think that he might have proven a little something to himself in that Indiana game. So he's still a little bit of a work in progress. I'm wondering, can he finish the season strong and attract some professional attention from scouts or from agents? Or would he be a guy that would want to come back as a sixth-year senior? As a graduate student, I don't know. I wouldn't rule that out. Would they want him? Maybe. I don't know. I think they'd want him. But again, point here is that he's kind of become one of Tucker's favorites in terms of talking to him on a regular basis. Jacob Panasiuk, same thing. He's looked pretty good at times. I wonder if he could make the NFL. Maybe a non-drafted free agent. Would he want to go that route? Would he want to come back? He'll probably get a lot of advice from his brother, who's been in NFL camps. I think he's on a taxi squad right now in the NFL. Panasiuk, I'm guessing he might give the NFL a shot. If it doesn't work out, I think he might be fine with that. But Panasiuk's another guy that played early, played as a true freshman, never redshirted. Would he want to come back and think that one more year might help him in the NFL, for the NFL? I don't know. Trey Person, finally getting his first year under Harlan Barnett, the man who recruited him. Person was another guy that was hurried onto the field as a true freshman. Now he gets a chance to potentially come back next year. I asked Mike Tressel about that a few weeks ago, and he said, yeah, the rule might be good for someone like Trey Person, but that decision ultimately comes down, of course, to Mel Tucker and whether he wants to keep some of these players around. But I think Trey Person is a guy at the safety position they might want to make room for another year. Harlan Barnett might like to work with him for another season. A.J. Arcuri is an interesting one, a guy that's battled some injuries, has now had a sustained level of health for 12 months, and he continues. He's been good in pass protection, and he's inching along as a run blocker, inch. How many more inches can he go if he came back for another year? This is a program that needs offensive tackles. A.J. Arcuri's a proven Big Ten level offensive tackle. Do you just hand him his graduation cap and gown, move his tassels, send him on, or do you bring that guy back? I think you bring A.J. Arcuri back. It's not my choice. But I think they could use him next year. So Dominique Long, will he be gone? Possibly. Not sure. So you're asking how many of these guys might be coming back? Dotson could, I would think. Trey Person could, I would think. A.J. Arcuri could. I would think they would need him. Jacob Panasiuk. Not sure about Naquan Jones. I think they'd welcome him back. Coughlin, I don't know what's going on with the other kickers. If Olsen's looking really good, then maybe you go with him. But if not, maybe you stick with Coughlin. I don't know. I know Coughlin's been up and down. Was great as a freshman, up and down. Jordan Reed, does he come back? That was his plan. Maybe he'll be pretty good when he comes back, even better. What about a walk-on like Drew Beasley? Walk-on? He's a redshirt senior right now. Would he want to come back for a sixth year? Or would this be enough? He's done pretty good this year. Does he feel like he's hit his ceiling, sacrificed enough, ready to move on? You're talking about a two-time academic All-Big Ten guy, Drew Beasley, economics major. He might be ready to go. I don't know. But that's all of them. There's not many. I've only got 12 scholarship seniors. And let's say 6 of them come back. Michigan State's got, 17 recruits right now? But to answer that question in full, I would need to know for sure that NCAA rule. And I think they can go over 85 next fall. Then the years after that, they've got to get back down to 85. All right, let's what are the questions we have here? All right. Uh, WX Spartan from the banks of the Saginaw River. This is a repeat question from last week, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. But he says, Jim, to the casual observer, the offensive line play has been bad this year. Is there anything under the hood in film study that you see as positive improvement from last year? Are there any small signs of hope, or do you think we're headed to early playing time for recruits, Vandermark, Ethan Boyd, etc.? I don't know about early playing time for those guys. Maybe they can compete for it. Maybe the Baldwin kid can compete for it coming in as a JUCO, although he didn't play this year because the JUCO season was canceled. What I said last week was um, the run blocking has not been as terrible as you might think. They've not gotten any chunk yardage, and of course, they're not blowing anyone off the ball. And they're certainly not going to do it this week. But yards per carry against Iowa and Indiana were not bad. It was like 3.0 and 3.3. That might not sound good, but Iowa at the time ranked number 1 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per rush attempt. So, Tucker said that they had 15 efficient run plays against Iowa. The problem is, and that's probably 3 yards, at least 3 yards, and nobody gets beat on a block. And you might sound like that. You might think, well, that sounds like a low bar. And we are going low bar compared to last year. That's what your question is about. I think it's similar to last year. I don't think it's worse than last year. I'd have to go back to back to back and look at it. I think it might be a little better than last year. It's not going to show itself against this competition. Certainly not good enough. Certainly lower percentile in the Big Ten in terms of run game. Part of that is the tight ends. Tight end run blocking, not great. So if you can't run outside of the strong side, all that, well, that's not good. If you can't run to Michigan State sometimes sets a tight bunch to the tackle box, tight end, wide receiver. Their best wide receiver at the beginning of the year, blocking wide receiver, was Trey Mosley. He got hurt. So in terms of a blocking wide receiver, they don't really have great blocking wide receivers either, especially if they want to go with a tight bunch formation. So sometimes the offensive line, nobody's getting beat on the offensive line, but a tight end is. Or a running back is not taking it to the hole properly. I've seen less of that this year. But I'm not ready to say that they've halted any of their progress. That's what I said last week. I'm not saying that their progress is completely stymied. Now, against Rutgers, they were terrible. No secret about that. They've been better since then, which is not saying a lot. But one of the problems is turn it over against Iowa, 2 of the first 3 possessions? I forgot now. They're down, 28-0 early second quarter. The run game's out of the picture by late first quarter against Iowa. Against Indiana, turn it over 3 of the first 5 possessions. And you punt one time on 3rd and 2, Rocky Lombardi and Jordan Simmons on the opening drive of the game. They kind of botch up a zone read option. It looked like Lombardi left the ball in Simmons' stomach. Maybe didn't do it firmly enough. Maybe those two have not done it enough together, so they drop it on the carpet. You got a true freshman there and a quarterback who, quite frankly, has not run a lot of zone read option. And that's what you get. You get a choreography problem, fumble. Michigan State recovers it out of field goal range, punt. But they essentially didn't get a play run on short yardage, 3rd and 2, which is when an offensive line wants to prove itself. I didn't happen to look to see how that play was blocked. Whether it was blocked successfully, I don't know. But can't blame the offensive line on that one. And then, interceptions. And then you fumble. You turn it over 3 of the first 5 possessions. One of those, Anthony Simmons fumbles at his own 15-yard line. First play of the drive against Indiana. That one, I remember, was blocked pretty well. I mean, he was going to gain 2 or 3 yards before he met contact. If he gets stopped right there, he gains 2. If he gets a foul forward yard, it's 3. If he makes someone miss, it could be more. But the offensive line did not get beat on that play. They fumbled in the backfield. First play of the drive. Not the offensive line's fault. So Michigan State is down 17-0 and soon to be 24-0. And once again, for the second straight game, the run game is out the window. So the number of Michigan State had 16 tailback runs last week. It's hard to judge. It's hard to grade an offensive line when you're not giving them a chance to do any work. So it's not going to look good this week because it's hard to run the ball against Northwestern. And it's not going to look good against Ohio State either. Penn State might not look good against them either. You just have to wish that they could have played against Maryland. Even if they would have lost to Maryland, it still would have been good to see Peyton Thorne on the field against Maryland, against a defense that is not Indiana, Northwestern, or Ohio State. And I'm not saying Indiana is the 85 Bears, but what they do in the secondary, everybody saw that against Ohio State this weekend. They turn you over. They get 2 interceptions a week, sometimes 3. They're very good at it. We said that in the pre-snap read before the Indiana game. Now, Ohio State scored 42. They got a pick 6, so they scored 35. Did most of their damage on the run. But you saw that Justin Fields had the worst game of his college career against Indiana. That was very interesting. Anyway, that's who Peyton Thorne had to make his debut against. How'd Justin Fields look against Indiana? Not so good. Now, everybody's buddy Joe Milton at Michigan, he threw for 300 against Indiana. Got, hit him on some deep posts. Ronnie Bell had a good game. So I'm not saying Indiana's great, but they're tricky. So for all those reasons, I just wish we could have seen Peyton Thorne against Maryland. That's probably not the last time you're going to hear me say that. Run game, offensive line would have liked to have seen those guys against Maryland. Because the offensive line might play up to their ability this weekend and rush for 55 yards. But, Iowa rushed for 77. Purdue rushed for 1 yard. So you can actually be a functional offensive line and not know it when you play Northwestern. They're that solid up front. Let's go back over here. Now, those are some questions. I'm going to go back over to the Underground message board to see the remaining questions. Josh from Hamburg Township, Michigan. Hamburg Township. Josh from Hamburg. I don't know where Hamburg Township is. This is from... I'm looking this gentleman up. I'm trying to think here. All right. He says, great job as always, Jim. Thanks to you. Appreciate it. Thanks to Jim and the rest of the SpartanMag staff, for sure. Paul Conradine doing a great job this week, as always. Corey Robinson, outstanding. The recruiting anchor, SpartanMag.com, recruiting insider. Justin Thinn, a tremendous recruiting reporter and insider. Intern extraordinaire. He's back home for Thanksgiving. Hope he has a great, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all do have a great, safe, happy Thanksgiving. Ricardo Cooney doing a great job. All the cast of characters at SpartanMag.com, including those of you that post on the Underground Bunker message board all the time. Appreciate that. This post from Josh from Hamburg Township. He says, we really appreciate all the extra effort being put in during this very different looking year. Thanks to you. He says, any idea on how many recruits on the current commitment list are planning to sign during the early signing period? And do you think we will eventually sign a full 25-man class? He says, thanks again for offering top-notch content. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, I can only go by what Tucker said back at the beginning of the summer when he said he expected to sign a full 25-man class. I'm expecting that's going to be the case. They're at 17 right now. Can they clear more room to get up to 25? One way or another, Tucker's not going to be shy about telling people, hey, we got to bring in 25 this year. You've done a great job. We appreciate your work, but we're going to escort you to the portal. I think that's going to happen. And it's a tough business. Football's a tough business. I think that's going to happen. Some guys might leave on their own. I'm not sure how many need to be cleared out in order to sign a full 25, but yes, I think they're going to sign a full 25. I think Tucker's going to make sure that happens. Now, what about he asked how many are going to sign in December? I'm guessing all of them are going to sign in December. If they can hang on to all these recruits, which as of now, I don't see any huge emergency signals going on. There's a little bit of concern about Audric Estime because he's great. 4-star running back from New Jersey. He's great. and Notre Dame's after him, and of course Rutgers is. But Corey Robinson and Justin Thinn, they've got their ear to the ground to it real well, and they think Michigan State's got a good chance to hang on to Estime. So it's my understanding that all those guys are going to sign in December, even the ones that never visited, because there's no reason to wait till February because the NCAA is not allowing any visits between now and February. So I think the NCAA came out with that ruling to prevent people from opting not to sign in hopes that they might be able to visit in January. They're letting people know right now, hey, there's no visits in December, no visits in January. That's the way recruiting is for 2020, 2021, going into February of 2021. By the spring, it could change. So this whole recruiting class across the country is making decisions and signing with schools in a lot of cases at schools they never visited. But yes, and to answer your question, I think they're all going to sign all the Michigan State commitments, and I think they're going to sign 25 by when they get to February. Question is how many players are still going to remain uncommitted by February, more or less, more or fewer than usual. You know, in August, I heard Mike Farrell talking about it, and I think there were forecasts that more players were going to wait till February for the reasons I just mentioned. But now, you can't be taking visits later. There are unofficial visits, though. I was on the Alabama website, the AlabamaRivals.com site, and they had stories about some of the players that were expected to come in to watch the Iron Bowl, the Alabama-Auburn game. I think they are playing host to recruits at SEC home games. I think they are, which gives them an advantage against maybe Midwestern teams that are trying to pull teams out of the South. Now, some of the teams in the South, some of the best players in the South, they won't be leaving the Southeast anyway. Yeah, Ohio State will get a couple, Michigan will get a couple, Penn State, but it's not like Purdue and Michigan State are going to beat, you know, Georgia for a Georgia kid, right? You got to beat Georgia Tech and other, Louisville for Georgia kids. You're not going to go down there and beat the Bulldogs if you're a Big Ten team, unless you're Ohio State, maybe Michigan, maybe Penn State. So, SEC teams, you see, they're allowing 20% fans into those buildings. Well, obviously, they're allowing recruits in too. In the Big Ten, meanwhile, all season it's been only the parents of players, and now, at least in the state of Michigan, not even allowing the parents of players. Nobody. Just media, because I guess we're essential workers or something like that. We kind of got grandfathered on that one. Now, there's media that cover, the Capitol. I'm talking about the Lansing Capitol, just what, not a political statement there, but like journalists that actually have an important job, unlike people like me, the real watchdog journalists, as it used to be in the old days, and hopefully journalists we can get back to doing that better and better. Not a political statement, just I'm hopeful for the best all the way around. For good reason, they are essential workers. And sports media, we're allowed into these games. I'm not going to argue with it. I'm happy to be there. So, but no parents now for these games. So obviously no recruits for any Big Ten games all fall. Yet, based on something I learned today, it looks like recruits are allowed to go to the games in the South, if I read that right on the Alabama site. So I digress. Anyway, Stormy 843 out of Charleston, South Carolina says, hey, does Northwestern make the college football playoffs if they beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game? The answer to that question is yes. And I think it sets up that way with Chris Trinum coming in big again. I don't know if this will ring. No, the spittoon is... It's the spittoon from rivalrytrophy.com. Our friends there, check them out. I need to get that Paul Bunyan trophy in here. But I thought it was going to ring, but I think it's made out of a composite. Probably a wood composite. Anyway, trying to appreciate it. I still don't have a bell. I'm going to have to get one. I've not been out of the house in a week and a half since the lockdown resumed. Been working. So I need to go get a bell. Alex James says the spittoon is full of spit. You're probably right. But thanks, Chris Trinum. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Appreciate the personal sponsorship from you. And you're here every week. We appreciate that. And you're sponsoring a lot. Appreciate that. And that's a big sponsorship. Really appreciate that at SpartanMag.com. And we want to remind people that, hey, man, those are really appreciated. And the $2 tip jar, that's appreciated also. Don't be intimidated by Chris with hanging a 25 up there. Twos are awesome also. With Chris, man, really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. He says, happy Thanksgiving to the Spartan Mag fam. Go green. Go green to you, Chris Trinum. Really appreciate that. Now, Northwestern. So I think the selection committee, the playoff committee, putting Northwestern at number 8 sets the table for exactly what you're talking about. They didn't want to put, and Northwestern's 5-0. They probably legitimately need to be 8, 9, somewhere in there. So they didn't want to put Northwestern low if they would have had, like, by eye test, by just looking at them, and they might think they're not very good. I'm just hypothetically saying this. If they would have put them like at 10 or 11, and then if they go and they do surprise Ohio State and win that, they don't want Northwestern to be number 9 or number 8 if and when they beat Ohio State. Because then they're going to be like, oh crap, what do we do? Do we jump them all the way to 4? We've had them at 9. Do we do that? So they're putting them up there in that holding pattern just in case they beat Ohio State. Yeah, they'll jump in. They go undefeated. If they're undefeated and they beat Ohio State, yeah, they're going to be in. I don't know how possible that is. I mean, it's possible. Ohio State, I think you need to be more explosive than Northwestern is on offense. Indiana is explosive on offense and real good in pass defense. So that mixture, as you saw, gave Ohio State a lot of trouble. And Indiana turned the ball over, twice inside the 15 and threw a pick 6. If Indiana doesn't do those 3 things, that game is tight. And Justin Fields would have had to make some had to come through with some downfield plays for Ohio State to win if those 3 turnovers had not happened. And I'm not sure he would have been able to do so. Birdman, actually, this is Rob South. He says, how big do you anticipate this recruiting class to be? I'm thinking 25 still. I think 25. Thermopylae from the Motor City says, how many games does a first-year quarterback need to play before you feel comfortable enough to decide they are not the future? I don't think he means me. I think he means Michigan State in general. How many games does a first-year quarterback have to need to play before you feel comfortable deciding they are not the future? It depends on how bad they look. Sometimes guys that look really bad never get on the field. I remember John L. Smith, one of the quarterbacks that he signed out of Florida. They moved him to tight end after a couple of weeks. He ended up going to Florida Atlantic, but I saw him 1 week in practice, and it just was not pretty, and he never got on the field. I mean, those guys right away. I'm not talking about Stephen Reeves. There's somebody else. I can't think of his name. But Stephen Reeves got on the field, didn't do real well. I mean, Drew Stanton was still injured the first time he played from that injury that he had against Nebraska in the bowl game when Incognito took that cheap shot at him. When he got back on the field the next year, was not good. But then he became Drew Stanton. So you don't want to give up on somebody coming off an injury like that. Reeves was not very accurate in high school. And he got a shot at Michigan State early in the John L. Smith era, was not very accurate, and it wasn't very long you're asking, the quarterback from Poland, Ohio. I think that's where he was from. Yes, exactly right, Doors Fan 91. You're showing me something. Good job. Thought I might be able to look that up real quick, but I don't have it. But yeah, that's the quarterback. Sean Clayton. Yes, that's him, Doors Fan 91. Wow. Check out the big brain on Doors Fan 91. listening to all that Doors music, The End, and all that stuff. He's breaking on through for us. Good job, Doors fan. And Sean Clayton, yeah, I saw him in practice, and I'm like, that's not going to work. I don't think that's going to work. And I tried to stay open-minded on it. If I'd seen it again 20 years later, I would know for sure that wasn't going to work. But that day I was like, are you serious? Was not going to work. So, how many games a first-year quarterback? It depends. There's no great answer about that. But a first-year quarterback, how many do you need to know? So you're asking indirectly about Peyton Thorne. Will we know by the end of the year whether he's not the guy? Well, I mean, I remember like 1991 when Jim Miller was a redshirt sophomore and they were trying to save that season. And, Mill Coleman played quarterback and Brad Johnson played quarterback and Jim Miller played quarterback and none of them did all that well. And Michigan State was under 500, did not make a bowl game for the first time since 1986. You would not have thought that Jim Miller was an NFL quarterback at that time. 1994, George Perlis' last year, Tony Banks hot and cold. He just transferred in from junior college, but you would not have thought that he was an NFL quarterback. In an NFL frame and arm, but long NFL career. So, year number one, you get an idea. You might see terrible right away, but I'm intrigued to see what Peyton Thorne's going to look like. I highly doubt that we will see anything conclusively to the negative with Peyton Thorne in the next 3 games. You'll see some struggles against 2 very good defenses and probably a good one at Penn State. But he saw a good defense in Indiana. And of his 20 pass attempts, 10 of them involved a blitz. So, I mean, Indiana was coming after him. They did not make things easy for him. He saw the real shooting match, as Nick Saban might say. So you've already seen Peyton Thorne. He can operate. Now he's got to spread it around the field a little bit more. All 10 of his completions against Indiana were to his right. He's got to be able to come back this way. He's got to continue to do things and grow as he shows different things. But to get back to your answer to your question, I don't think we will see a conclusive answer to the negative with Thorne. Maybe you'll see a conclusive answer to the positive with him. I kind of doubt that too. I think you're just taking inventory. By the end of the year, I'm guessing we'll see that there's a little bit more there with Thorne than Lombardi, which is that was my preseason semi-educated forecast for the season. I thought Lombardi would start. I thought that he would lose the job by the Michigan game. I expected that to be a loss. I expected an unsightly loss. I'm talking about my September forecast. And I thought Thorne would get his shot at that point and do enough to be the guy. And that wasn't based on much of anything I'd seen from Thorne. Seen him very little in practice and just looking at high school film and mainly what I heard from last year's coaches. But Lombardi then surprised me and came back better than I expected earlier this year and then kind of had a relapse in recent weeks. Have we seen the last of Lombardi? I doubt it. Because Tucker indicating this week that competition is still ongoing. They probably know who they're going to start, and they may have already told the players, and maybe everybody's keeping it quiet, or maybe they've not told the players yet, and they're doing that for psychological reasons to continue the competition all the way till the middle of the week. I don't know. But, I mean, is there a chance we're going to see a blowout against Ohio State? I suspect Vegas is going to planning on a 20, 25, 28-point spread for that game. Solid chance if there's a blowout that the number 2 quarterback will play against Ohio State by the 4th quarter. Yes. Is that going to be Lombardi or Theo Day if Thorne starts? My point is, probably have not seen the last of Lombardi. I'm not predicting some great, grand Joe Montana resurrection. Good kid. I wish him the best. He's going to keep plugging, and they need him because you never know what's going to happen with Thorne. But they need him for the rest of the season to make the best out of it. But the season, someone was saying earlier that it's kind of depressing. And I look at it as kind of like a farm team year, looking for players, looking for D-line, looking for players to come around. And if they get another win, that would be great for recruiting for Michigan State fans. But seriously, 1-6 is a possibility, right? They're 1-3 right now, 1-4, 3 more games. Northwestern, Penn State, Ohio State, they could go 1-6. Call it a year. It's a tough year. Appreciate all the fans hanging in there. We got some more questions to get to, but on a year like this, The fans that hang around are the true fans, and I got a lot of respect for those people. It's too bad we can't see you in the stadium, because then I can really see who the real fans are. And I saw you guys in 2016. Saw you guys in 2002. The guys that kept coming to the stadium. And the gals. So those are the real fans. My kind of people. Let's go back over here to the chat area and wrap this thing up. Appreciate all the positive comments and the questions. And Chris Trinum wishing a happy Thanksgiving to all of us. All right, I kind of broke the internet here a little bit. Try to repair it. Let's see if I can find my place. I can only go back to Tom Coyle when he said goodnight. So I apologize if I've missed some of the chats, but I'm going to pick right up here with Alex James. He says, this football team is a lost cause. I hate to say, if things aren't way better by 2022, it will be rumblings and hot seats and fan outcry, as it should be. Alex James has spoken. Old Tuck says, Mike Hankwitz defense. Old Tuck says, 50-year D1 coach, longest tenured. He's Bud Foster and then some, just doesn't require any publicity. Yeah, Hankwitz is great. He's good, he's tricky, and he's got more physicality in that defensive front than he usually does, and it's made a big difference. He's got a lot of seniors, like Tucker talking about that today. They're just dripping with redshirt seniors. Alex James says, by the way, how is Luke Fickell doing this year? He's doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I'm not surprised. Tyler Miller says, hey, Comp, with the NBA draft being over with and Kareem Mane did not get drafted, what's your take on him? Do you think he should have gone to state? Yeah, I think that he had, talking about the 6'5" point guard out of Montreal, I don't know who got in his ear and told him he was going to be drafted. He was thinking about going to Michigan State, and if he had decided to go to college, it was going to be Michigan State. So he could very easily have been the backup point guard tomorrow night against Eastern Michigan. And if he had come to Michigan State, would Foster Loyer have stayed? I don't know. It's a good question. Loyer loves being here. He loves being a captain, but that would have been an interesting thing to juggle. You're asking, do you think he should have gone to state? Sure. But Canadian kid, professional mindset. Does he go G League? Does he look to go to Europe? Will there be a G League? Will there be a Europe this year? That was part of the things that was one of the things that players were wrestling about, whether coming out or going in back in April, May, June, July. That's why NCAA kept extending the deadline to make a decision, because the college players were not sure what they were deciding about, because they didn't know if there'd be a college season, didn't know if there'd be, we knew there'd be an NBA season, right? But is there a G League season? Is there any kind of minor league basketball anywhere on the continent this year besides college basketball? Right now, with the way things are going, gosh, I don't see a G League this year. I don't know what's going on. I know they're playing soccer in Europe, but are they playing basketball in Europe? I don't know. So, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that one. MM Drippy says, can we talk basketball? What's the point of talking about football? It's just depressing. MM Drippy, you got to stop being so drippy. Stop being so drippy, man. Turn the faucet off. You'll be all right. Alex James says, Wisconsin versus Minnesota canceled. That's breaking news. So, you just got to hope Northwestern gets in here safely and Michigan State gets in here safely so we can see a football game. And it might be ugly, but at least Tucker and these guys can get some more work in and take some more inventory. And yes, Michigan State could get shut out again. But you just need games. Wisconsin, Minnesota canceled. I don't know if that was, this is news to me. I wonder if, my first question is whether that was canceled on Wisconsin's behalf or Minnesota's. If Wisconsin, then what a loss of a year for them, because I don't know. How are they going to get back on they won't have I don't know what's going to go on with bowl games anyway. But they don't have enough to qualify for the Big Ten championship game. I mean, Northwestern's got it wrapped up, right? Oh, Minnesota canceled. Thanks, Doors fan. So Minnesota has a problem now. Well, credit to those that have made it. Everybody's tried, and the players and athletes wanted to play, and that's all I'm going to say about that right now. Detroit Spartan says, Detroit Spartan in the house. Saturday's going to be rough, no doubt. Alex James, checking in again, says, shocking to see the lack of defense in the SEC this year. Typically very solid at the top. Doors fan, is Deontay Davis in the NBA G League? He was bouncing around last year. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt he'll be on a preseason NBA roster. And how about the NBA? They wrapped up, 2 months ago? Then the draft, and then free agency the very next day. Have to get free agency all done because that season starts again in 4 weeks. So what are they going to get? 2 weeks of practice? Are they hurrying it up a little bit too much just to get started in time for Christmas, to have their big TV day on Christmas? I don't know, but that's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, I give them credit for playing their season, and I enjoyed the bubble tournament, but you just get that accordion effect with the calendar. And then they got to shoehorn the draft in there. And then they have to wait till that's over to begin free agency. And free agency was just an explosion the last couple of days. All right. Doors fan 91. Are you thinking of Doug Davis, who played point guard and went to Miami of Ohio as a transfer after a sophomore year? No, I'm talking about, when I was talking about Michigan State basketball earlier, it was a walk-on. Brandon Smith was his name. Remember Brandon Smith? And I see him in games once in a while. He shows up. He still comes back. I think his name was Brandon Smith. Yeah, here he is, I think. Yeah, he transferred to Michigan State from Coastal Carolina, originally from Rochester, New York. Listed at 5'11", but he was actually not quite that tall. Played 27 games during the national championship year and 18 in 01. He was the backup point guard when Cleves was injured early in the year. But he actually averaged more minutes per game in 01 after Cleves graduated. Played in 18 games, 6 minutes per game. Because in 01, Charlie Bell became the starting point guard and Marcus Taylor was the backup. So Brandon Smith was a walk-on backup his whole career, but he played quality minutes in a couple of games when Cleves was injured. But when Cleves was injured, let's see. The other guy played some point. The kid from Brampton, Ontario. I see him all the time. David Thomas. David Thomas played some backup point. The year, I mean, he did early in his career also, but when Cleves was injured, it was Charlie Bell and then David Thomas, but Brandon Smith as well. But for some reason, I want to say there was a Louisville game, and Brandon Smith had to play like 6 minutes in the first half. But that's what Hoiberg would do. He'd pull a Brandon Smith if necessary. To get back to the question that was answered earlier, what would happen if Rocket Watts theoretically were in foul trouble, and let's say Foster Lawyer's out with COVID? Then who's the point guard? My answer, Hoiberg. But would Hoiberg go 40 minutes? Oh, you're saying foul trouble, so Rocket wouldn't be out the whole game. But Hoiberg is in there. He's a little bit of an insurance policy. I mean, you're not going to go to the Final Four with Hoiberg running the show, but he can stopgap you. He can be a stopgap. LaMelo Ball Moment says, what are the chances with Chief Borders? Chief Borders, linebacker from Georgia, announced, I think today, that he's going to be dropping a top 5 pretty soon. He's been committed to Florida, University of Florida, for a long time. He's a 3-star, 6 foot, big linebacker, 6'3" linebacker out of Georgia. Let's see. From Franklin, Georgia. They list him at 6'4", 230. Number 50 player in Georgia. He's been committed to the Gators, but Michigan State's continued to recruit him all along with plans of trying to flip him at some point. I don't know exactly what's going on there in terms of Florida. Is Florida slow playing him? I doubt it. I don't know. But Michigan State's been in there, and they've remained active Corey Robinson's done a good job keeping us abreast of that situation. And I've mentioned Chief Borders here on the podcast a few times in the past. So you're asking me what are the chances? I've not heard any big rumblings. So if Michigan State's in good shape, they probably want to keep it quiet. I don't know. Just so people can't counterpunch on them. But see, this is the type of thing, I mean, this is the new Mel Tucker era. To go down into Georgia, down into Southeast, and try to flip a Florida Gator commitment, even if it's a guy that Florida decides they can get somebody else maybe a little further ahead, a little better, that they perceive could or should be better in 3 years, that might not be accurate. They might think that, but the other guy, the original, might have been better. But for Michigan State to get down there and start butting heads in a situation like that, that's new ground for Michigan State recruiting. New ground indeed. And it's kind of exciting, right, if you're a Michigan State fan. Linebacker recruiting has been a little bit of a puzzler all along. But if they get Borders, that would kind of change the look of some things. Michigan State continues to be involved with Bryce Steele. Mentioned him 2 weeks ago. A guy that Michigan State started following a little bit, or a lot of bit. He was committed at the University of South Carolina. South Carolina fired Will Muschamp, so that's dislodged some of their recruits, including Bryce Steele, who announced today that he respectfully is decommitting from South Carolina. Again, this comes a week after I posted on the Underground Bunker message board that's a name to keep an eye on. Bryce Steele, linebacker from Alexandria, Virginia. I looked at Bryce Steele's video. Reminds me a lot of Antoine Simmons. Kind of a sports car linebacker who hits hard. Reminds me a lot of Simmons' high school film. Jalen Reed is the guy that's committed to Penn State from Detroit King. He continues to, listen to Michigan State. And Michigan State has been in on him the whole time. He's a hybrid linebacker type of guy. I think he's listed as a safety, but I think he's got, you watch his film, his junior film anyway. I've not looked at his senior film. But Jalen Reed out of Detroit King, his film, his junior film, he was always playing at the linebacker level. They might have listed him as a safety, which makes him a box safety, but my point is he's playing in the box at the linebacker level, basically playing linebacker. You don't see him out in the slot covering somebody running a deep post or anything like that. He's playing linebacker. And I think that he is a box safety, Michael Dowell type maybe. Somewhere between Michael Dowell and Antoine Simmons possibly. So linebacker recruiting has been a little bit of a mystery for Michigan State at this point, but you got Bryce Steele decommitment out of South Carolina, Chief Borders. They're in the hunt with him. Jalen Reed committed to Penn State. So that's what's going on there. Alex James saying they can waive the scholarship limit, but do we have the budget for so many extra scholarships right now? Thanks to Alex James. He's helping me out a little bit about me saying that I wasn't sure in 2021 if for 1 year you can be above 85. That's the way I remember it, but I don't always trust my memory at this old age. But yeah, do they have the budget? I think so. I think they've got the budget. I don't think that'd be a problem. I thought I saw something here. Did I see something flash here? Let me go back up to the top. So the budget, it's not going to be like there's going to be 20 extra scholarships that they've got to pay for. It would only be like 5 or 6, I think. I think they will be culling some of the scholarship guys that they will escort to the portal. There'll be attrition. And like Tucker said today in the press conference, some of that, in terms of knowing your roster and some of that attrition, would have happened in spring if it had been a normal spring, which is something I theorized throughout the summer. But Michigan State held on to all their scholarship guys, brought them into camp August, lasted 4 days, turned them loose again in September. That's the first time they got a chance to look at them was September. So by that time, you can't get rid of players. 2 of them have moved on in the last week or so. There will be more, but they'll get it whatever room they need to get to 25. I think they'll do, and they don't need to get below 85 for next year, but it might happen anyway. But my question, I don't know about grad transfers. Do you need to have room under 85 to add a grad transfer? So if you keep your seniors, you might not have room to get a grad transfer. That's small print that I've not seen that scenario brought up by anybody. So, but in terms of being over 85, if they keep 91, they can pay for 6 scholarships. I know money was tight, but I think they'll make it happen. I think they're at a point right now where they just keep moving chips to the middle of the table. There's like getting behind Mel Tucker. So I think they'll be above 91. They'll be above 85 next year. Then you gotta get back down to 85, which they'll figure that out too. Detroit Spartan says, oh, let's see, I lost my place. Talking about Hoiberg, he says, Detroit Spartan says he really looked up to Big Mike and the mayor, which motivated him. I think you're talking about Hoiberg. Talking about Big Mike, talking about Jordan. Never heard of him. And the mayor, that's Hoiberg's dad. Oh, wait. I think losing them hurt his drive, motivation. Talking about Naquan Jones, right? Alex James says, I wouldn't mind having Panashuk back as long as he doesn't do anything dirty like the Michigan game last year. That was embarrassing to see. That was a late hit on the quarterback, right? Yeah, that was late. I've seen worse. But yeah, that was unnecessary. Talking about Jacob Panashuk. Detroit Spartan says, would love to have our Curry back. I agree. I think he's just, gaining some traction. And when you got a 6'7" guy there that can offer some protection, I think he's just going to get better there. And maybe he would have a chance to play professionally after if he keeps building. He's only played 10 games in his college career. And he's a fifth-year senior. I mean, started, been, playing group guy. And remember I told you after the green-white game, the 2019 green-white game, and he had never started before. He was a redshirt junior, had never really been on the field. I said, our Curry has the look. He can be a bona fide Big Ten pass protector. And that was based on some of what I heard, but also the way he looked in the green-white game. There's enough in those spring games for a few players that you can make some good evaluations and determinations. A lot of people will be like, the spring game, it's all vanilla, it doesn't mean anything. That's for people that are looking at what's going on above the water, the synchronized swimming above the water. I'm down here looking under the hood a little bit. And sometimes there's clues. Not always, but sometimes there's clues. Too bad we didn't have one this year. Hopefully we'll have one this spring. Alex James says, I don't think any of these guys can say they hit their ceiling. We have not been competitive in 3 years. Well, Drew Beasley may have hit his ceiling. The team has not been competitive, but there are individual players who theoretically have hit their ceiling. I was talking about Drew Beasley, a walk-on. Would he want to come back? He's a fifth-year senior now, 2-time academic All-Big Ten, economics major. Would he want to deal with it again? Because being on a football team is like 12 months of boot camp. I mean, it is tough, and this year's been especially tough. The discipline they have to have about not seeing their family through good times and bads. I mean, through good times and bad for athletes. I mean, they're with the same 3-4 teammates all the time. They're group of roommates. And then they're around their position group people. But they don't even mix much with their teammates. I mean, game day they do. Practice out in the field, whatever. But, since July, just the same guys. And that competitive arena and those, all the testosterone, and then you lose games. Or you might lose your starting job. The mental health of athletes across the country is something that athletic directors are very mindful of and concerned about, and they're trying to give as much support as they can to these guys in various sports, but especially football. not being able to see their parents. And then you've got players that don't make the dress list, don't travel. But even for home games, Michigan State's only dressing 74 players. So there's 25 guys that are doing all of these sacrifices and not making the dress list, not able to get on the field, and not able to visit with their parents when their parents come to watch the game. That's difficult. Now the parents are not being able to come to the games because of the new order in the state of Michigan. So tough times for these athletes. So if you're someone like Drew Beasley, who's been through a tough year like this, and you've graduated, and you've had a great academic career and probably a good professional career outside of football coming up, do you want to go another 12 months of boot camp? Or do you feel like you've gotten as good as you can do? You've had your 1 year as a starter and you're done. I don't know. I don't know where he is. It's a lot to ask of somebody, but I'm wondering if that's a walk-on that might want to come back without a scholarship. He's got an extra year of eligibility if he wants it. I don't know. AJ Wallace says, who do you think will start at quarterback on Saturday for Michigan State? I think it's going to be Peyton Thorne. Detroit Spartan. Rocky's last 2 games were the worst I can remember an MSU quarterback having back-to-back. It wasn't pretty, was it? Detroit Spartan says, so it has to be Peyton Thorne, but he will struggle for sure. Talked about the number of interceptions that Northwestern has forced against Wisconsin and Iowa and a little bit against Nebraska, but not Purdue. Purdue did not turn it over. By the way, Brom at Purdue has done a good job coaching that team this year. Was really good 2 years ago. Last year struggled. It was an important year for Purdue to come back and play functional football, and they have. And in the games I've seen, they've been well coached this year. Alex James says, yeah, he has been Damon Dowdell level of bad. Detroit Spartan says, that's the name that came to mind, Dowdell. Yeah, that was early 2000s. Detroit Spartan says, they weren't bad games, they were awful games. So hoping Peyton can be better than awful versus a very tough defense. Robert Nixon says, freshman year at MSU right now. Congrats. Robert Nixon, thanks. Robert Nixon's a freshman at Michigan State? Wow. Oh, man. Remember those days, people? Remember those days? Remember those wonderful, wonderful days? For me, it was Holden Hall. Freshman. Well, if you're a freshman now, you're not at Holden Hall. You're not at any dorm. And that's tough. My niece is in that situation too, and I feel bad for her because you miss half of your senior year in high school and your freshman year of college. Tough times. But Robert, next year, hey, get in a dorm next fall and do your thing. Treat that as a freshman year of sorts as well. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And good luck to you, and enjoy those times and the friends you make next year when you're in the dorms. In some ways, if the dorm thing goes well for you, like it does for a lot of people, I heard it explained one time. A friend of mine said, when you go to the dorms, when you go to Michigan State, go to a lot of schools, but Michigan State, it's not like you go there and make friends. It's like you are assigned your friends. Because whoever's on your floor a lot of times becomes your friends. If you go into a fraternity, you can you'll meet a lot of people that way too. You'll meet a lot of people in a lot of ways. But for me and for a lot of people, I think a lot of it is like that initial core group you meet on your dorm floor your first year. I'm not speaking for everybody, but that's the experience for a lot of people, and it's a wonderful thing. The lady upstairs I've been married to for 20 years was somebody I met through that floor on that dorm that year. In a roundabout way, years later. So that's the name of that tune. Good luck to Robert Nixon. Detroit Spartan says, a nuclear war would not stop the SEC from hosting recruits. Detroit Spartan says, Comp moonlights as a political reporter. No. Detroit Spartan says, recruits are definitely unofficially visiting Alabama. Thank you for confirming that. I don't know if they're visiting other schools as well. I assume so. Man, I was watching Auburn last week. And I'm not Mr. Mask Police or anything, but just in Auburn, like none of the crowd was wearing masks. I mean, the cheerleaders were, some other like official people. A couple people here and there. And then I had the Missouri game on. Missouri was playing South Carolina, and like a lot of people were wearing masks there. Maybe they were policing it more. I don't know. Just an observation. No judgment. Alex James says, well, not sure it matters if Rocky starts. He'll get pulled after a few early turnovers. Probably right. Alex James says, I mean, it's ridiculous. We could just run the Wildcat and score 7 points, one would think. Alex James is posting a lot today, but he's cranky. It's all right. He earned it, I guess. I would like to see the baby says, let's go out and scare Northwestern on Saturday. Wow, has it really come to that? Has it really come to that? Just want to go out and scare Northwestern? Remember these days? Rose Bowl? Let's just go out and scare Northwestern. I agree with what you're saying, but that's where we are as Michigan State observers now. It can be done. And now that the Northwestern's got a very veteran team, seniors and redshirt seniors. 2 years ago, they were in the Big Ten championship game. It's not like they're new to this. So, and you know, it's a disciplined program. I don't think they're going to be like parading up and down Rush Street. Well, there's nothing going on Rush Street anymore. But they're not patting themselves on the back having beaten Wisconsin, having beaten 5-0, or being 5-0, and even being number 8 in the playoff rankings. They're still driving home the great favor that Joey Galloway did for Pat Fitzgerald and calling them the Reese Davises. Because now they're clinging to that and building off of that. And now you think bulletin board material doesn't work. They're using it, and they're using it in a fun way, not a negative motivation. So Northwestern, they'll come in here and they'll play their brand of football and they'll be solid. They will not be full of themselves. So scaring them, I mean, Purdue played them tough for a while. It can be done. The key is going to be, Peyton Ramsey, I think. I got to watch some more film. And he's good. And he's solid. And when he left Indiana, he was like Indiana's all-time leader in completion percentage. Good, solid player at Indiana. But Michael Penix was coming up, and the writing was on the wall that he wasn't going to beat him out, so transferred out. Good player. But Peyton Ramsey, I got to watch it. I got to focus in more. I watched the Wisconsin game, but I didn't really study it. I noticed that Ramsey a lot of times will stare down a receiver. He's got good footwork in the pocket, throws a nice ball, but he will stare receivers down. Hence, he does throw some interceptions. So you're going to need a couple of those. He had a sack fumble against Purdue. Northwestern recovered it, but that's the type of thing you're going to need. You're going to need to turn him over twice, sack fumble, manufacture some extra possessions. And a short field, preferably, because that defense is for real, right? You're going to need to tap into some of that deep ball magic you had against Michigan, although against Northwestern, you're not going to see that type of faulty man-to-man single coverage with no safeties over the top. They seem to always have safeties over the top. Running the ball is going to be very, very difficult. Like I said, the Purdue game with that little 4th and 1 to the tight end, 50-yard touchdown, you got to spring those little funny plays. Do you need to fake a punt once? I don't know. But scaring them, I mean, Northwestern's offense is not so great that if you can just get some first downs and punt and not turn it over, you don't have to play great to hold them under 24 points. Well, Indiana scored 24. Detroit Spartan says, if Rocky starts Saturday, I know a donor that might pull a 6-figure annual commitment to the Spartan Fund. No joke. Detroit Spartan says, and I could see Tuck doing it. Don't expect it, but it wouldn't surprise me. Talking about starting Rocky Lombardi would not shock me either. I'm thinking it's going to be a thorn, but we're still getting to know Mel Tucker, right? And there were some intangibles that he liked about Rocky Lombardi as a leader and so forth. And if you're the coach, and let's say theoretically in the last, they practiced last Wednesday and a little bit like Friday, Saturday, whatever it was in practice this week. What if in practice for the last 8 days, Peyton Thorne has made just flat out way more mistakes than Rocky Lombardi? It's possible. I doubt it. But if Lombardi starts, there'll be a reason for it behind the scenes in practice. There'll be a reason for it. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it's not as if Tucker hasn't watched these guys at all since the Indiana game and just went eeny, miny, mo, Rocky, you're going back in. Would not shock me, but we'll see. Detroit Spartan says they're splitting first-team reps. Detroit Spartan would know. So, what Tucker said today in the press conference is that the process and the competition is still ongoing. That's what he said. Detroit Spartan, he's a source that I believe and agree with, or I listen to. He says they're splitting first team reps. If he says that, I take that to be true, and that part doesn't surprise me either. That goes along with what Tucker said today, that the competition is still ongoing. That's what he said. I didn't know if he told us that because that's true, or if he told us that because that's what he wants, because he doesn't want to tip his hand to Northwestern that one player is above the other. Now we're getting into Wednesday. They know by now, I'd imagine, who's going to be the starter. I'm guessing. I don't know. But both splitting first-team reps. It's interesting. So that strengthens my belief that you've not seen the last of Rocky Lombardi. Maybe you've seen the last of him as a starter. I don't know. But things can happen in football. Lewerke gets dinged up last year. You have different starters going in. Peyton Thorne could become the man and then, kind of tweaks a hamstring or something. I don't want to, predict injuries or anything, but you've seen it before. Somebody's out and then they're right back in because of a ding. All right. I would like to see the baby says, without Ohio State, the Big Ten would be a joke. Yes, it would be. It'd basically be what the Big Ten used to be most years from 1970 until 2002, until Jim Tressel arrived. That was the Big Ten. A bunch of pretenders. I mean, Woody Hayes' last great year is what, 68? So from 68 until 2002, I guess, Michigan won the national title in 97. They were pretty good in 97. But they're lucky they didn't play Nebraska because Nebraska would have put a hole in them. I mean, Michigan had a good defense, doing a lot of zone blitz, a lot of man blitzes, man-to-man, man drops, man-to-man, a lot of pressure. The press defense, as they called it back then, was in vogue. But the weakness of that type of defense was old-fashioned triple option. And Nebraska was damn good at triple option at that time. Now I know Nebraska tied somebody, or they got a fluke victory over Missouri because of a 5th down or something. But by January 1st, I promise you, that Michigan team wanted. They might have thought they wanted Nebraska, but they didn't want Nebraska. They wanted Nebraska as much as Michael Spinks wanted Mike Tyson. And the next year, I know that Michigan had lost players and so forth. But in terms of apples versus apples, a different type of apple. But in the football laboratory, the next year, you saw the remnants of that 97 team. I know they lost a lot of players, but they were still doing the same system. And they ran into an option team. Donovan McNabb, Syracuse, and McNabb destroyed them. Against Nebraska, it would have been worse. Who did Nebraska beat in the bowl game that year? Was it Tennessee? They beat him 64-14. It wouldn't have been 64-14, but Nebraska would have put a hole in them. So they won that half national championship in 97. If it were under today's rules, they wouldn't have beaten Nebraska in the playoffs. All right. Doors fan 91 says quarterback. We're talking about Sean Clayton again. Good job finding that out. Doors fan 91 says a buddy of mine was the presser and said his highlight tape was god awful. Talking about Sean Clayton, I think. I think that's who you're talking about. That's the quarterback I mentioned earlier from Poland, Ohio, that I saw in practice for a week and was like, that guy's not going to last. Nothing against him. Chris Trinham says, that's a deep pull, Doors fan. I tried to block out a lot of that from undergrad, talking about Sean Clayton still. I feel bad that we've talked about him. I mean, he's just out there playing football, doing the best he can. Michigan State offers a scholarship. Sure, I'll go try. Doesn't last long. Goes to Florida Atlantic. Doesn't work out. Moves to tight end. It's not his fault, right? So Sean Clayton, good football player. Good high school player. Good for you, man. Long time ago. D-Mac says, do you think Antoine Simmons will be back? I don't think so. I think he's ready to go to the NFL, and he should go for it. Matthew Bobe says, which positions do you think Mel Tucker will go after in the transfer portal? It depends on if A.J. Curry comes back, but, linebacker maybe, tight end, offensive tackle, quarterback, depending on what we see in the last 3 games. I think those are all in play. Detroit Spartan says, I highly doubt Peyton comes even close to hitting his ceiling this season. He's going to struggle mightily. I don't disagree with that. You got Northwestern and Ohio State coming up. Maybe the Penn State game. Maybe that'll be a good way to wrap things up for Michigan State. AJ Wallace says, what do you think about the Michigan State basketball game tomorrow? I think Michigan State against Eastern, they blew them out last year, 90-50. Last year, Eastern Michigan was 9-1 after an easy pre-conference schedule. Eastern ended up going something like 6-12 in the MAC, ended up 16-16 overall after a 9-1 start. Eastern Michigan is predicted to be 8th in the MAC this year by MAC coaches, 8th or 9th, not great. They'll play zone. On offense, there's not much returning for Eastern Michigan in terms of dangerous, efficient players. They're returning a few players, but none of them that were great. Dan McGarry is something Doors Fan 91 just mentioned. Now, I remember Dan McGarry. He was a tight end from Poland Seminary High School. And I remember he was at Michigan State's camp, and afterwards, heading toward signing day, one of the Michigan State assistant coaches, Dave Baldwin, as a matter of fact, a guy that I had a lot of respect for as an offensive mind, he said Dan McGarry was a no-brainer to offer, a no-brainer. That's what he said. They liked him. He came to campus. He lasted about 2 weeks. I don't know. Don't know what happened there. Anyway, basketball. So, yeah, Eastern Michigan zone. Michigan's taking work on some zone offense. That's why Izzo likes to schedule Eastern Michigan. Gives them a chance to play against the good zone. Not a great zone, but it's a good sparring partner for that reason. But nothing terribly scary about Eastern. Anyway, we are about to, my phone's about to run out of juice. If this thing ends abruptly, it's because we ran out of juice. Let me see if I can go through this real quick. Alex James says, can we get some slants and crossing routes going for the love of Sparty? I hear you. Alex James says, now back when Dave Warner, and especially, who's the offensive line coach? Now the offensive line coach for the Saints. When he was offensive coordinator, they ran double slants all the time to the point where some people didn't like that. But you want to see slants and crossing routes. I'll keep an eye out for them. I think they're there. I don't know if our quarterback is finding them. Alex James says, we have a deep, quick group of receivers, and they are being wasted. Chris Trinum says, D-Mac comp thinks Simmons will go pro. I think he'll go pro. He's a senior. Chris Trinum says, the offensive line is not great right now. Tough to deliver the ball if the blocking is bad. And no, not defending Lombardi's play lately. Alex James says, we need a reliable passer. Then bring in Rocky for quarterback power when we need 3 yards. Well, I'm not sure Rocky can deliver. Who's the quarterback for the Saints from Brigham Young? Can't think of his name either. I don't think Rocky is that type of guy. I'm not sure he's got that kind of leg drive. Detroit Spartan says, hoping Peyton can stay healthy. Chris Trinum says, no arm punts. Tabor, is that his name for the Saints? Detroit Spartan says, Rocky likes to arm punt on early downs. Detroit Spartan, that's enough out of you. Ripping on Rocky Lombardi, that's enough. Taysom Hill. Thank you, Alex James. All right. Smokey Gamer says, do you think Shakur Brown stays outside? He's by far our best cover corner, Detroit Spartan. He's by far our best cover corner, and Gross has been pretty solid in the nickel. So he's asking, do I think Shakur Brown stays outside? Good question. Shakur Brown played inside at nickelback for a couple of weeks, and then with the injuries to Chris Jackson, he moved back out to straight corner, and then Angelo Gross came in and played the nickel. So do I think Shaq Brown stays outside? You're asking, like, if Christian Jackson comes back to health, who leaves? Is that what you're asking? It depends on Jackson. If Chris Jackson's available, I suspect Christian Jackson goes back to corner and Shaq Brown goes back to the inside. That's my guess. Chris Trinum says, Comp, who is the most difficult recruit that you ever covered for the mag? By difficult, I mean hard to get a hold of and or would not give any information. There's been a few of those. There's some right now. You're seeing more of that right now. Ask me that again tomorrow or next week on the bunker. I'll have to spend more time to think about it. Otherwise, we will have dead air here for a minute and a half while I try to think. So post that on the bunker next week, and I'll get back to that one. Chris Trinum says, Fickle is doing well, but he's in year 4 of his program. This was always going to be a rebuild. COVID turned it into one of the hardest ones ever. Detroit Spartan says, Fickle's a proven commodity. The man can coach, recruit, and motivate at a high level. He is pretty good. AJ Wallace says, what do you think about the Michigan State basketball game tomorrow? I was just talking about it. Detroit Spartan says, the entire season will depend on point guard play and COVID. All right. Matthew Bobe says, which positions do you think Mel Tucker goes after in the transfer portal? I just mentioned that a minute ago. Also, AJ Wallace says, do you think Gabe Brown will have a breakout year? Breakout year? What do you consider breakout year? I think he'll average double digits. I think he'll have some big games, some big moments. There'll be some games when he gets red hot from 3 and makes 3 or 4 or 5 3-pointers, and he'll throw in some entertaining dunks. So breakout year, I think if that's considered a breakout year, yeah, he will do that, and it might be off the bench. Roshar, thanks. Yeah, Roshar ran a lot of double slants on third downs. Double slants, it's good against man-to-man and zone. It gives you windows against zone, and then if you get inside release, it's good against man. So that's why in third downs, double slants used to be somewhat, even though it was predictable, it was safe. So why not run it every play? I guess you can't do it every play. Linebackers time it up and blow. You get people knocked hard on that one. Almost done here. Doors fan 91 says JLS recruiting was very boom or bust. John L. Smith recruiting was very boom or bust. He says, I can't believe he thought Joe Toth was a Big Ten player. Good Lord. All coaches have evaluation misses. Detroit Spartan says, if Shaq Brown was part of a normal, healthy, consistent program, I think he'd be a very solid corner. A normal, healthy, consistent program. Okay. I think he's a solid corner right now, actually. We'll see. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I really appreciate all the questions over the Underground Bunker message board. I appreciate all the chat questions. Appreciate Chris Trinum with a big personal sponsorship and all the people that tune in and watch. Those of you that are watching on tape delay later in the week, if it's Thanksgiving right now, hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And get over to SpartanMag.com if you are interested and intrigued and curious about SpartanMag.com, SpartanMag community. Get over there, SpartanMag.com. There's some free content, but also right now is the time to take advantage. 25% off, and you get a $75 Nike gift card if you subscribe before December 2nd. 12-month subscription. You will like it. So, all Spartan Maggers, hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Wednesday, covering Michigan State versus Eastern Michigan. Conan Dyke and I, we will be doing a VCast from Breslin. We're planning on it. Might have masks. We will have masks over our face if we do it from Breslin. Got the big game coming up Saturday against Northwestern. You'll be looking to see if there's some more progress from Michigan State, even if they lose. Pre-snap read coming up also. I'll try to squeeze that in sometime during holiday time. Appreciate all the people that tuned in. We will see you next time, next week, next Tuesday, Spartan Mag Live.